Many people say that they want to write a book, yet 9 out of every 10 people who start writing a book never finish it, leaving one of their biggest dreams unfulfilled. So, what is it about the 1 in 10 people who do finish writing their book? What do they have, and what drives them to complete their books, their plays, and their songs? Welcome to the Editor's Desk, where we explore their writing experiences, their motivations, and their struggles. And now, here are your hosts, author, writing coach, and self-publishing guide, Lynn Everard, and author, Louise Gomez. It's Friday. Actually, it's Thursday.
Lynn.
Wow, I'm rushing the week
yes,
already.
You are.
It's Thursday at 5:30 p.m. here in South Florida, where, yes, it did rain today. I'm not predicting it. I'm just telling you what happened earlier. And my name is Lynn Everard, and you are watching The Editor's Desk.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Louise Gomez. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
So, I've been working with a client.
Which one? You have a lot of clients.
Right. So he's been a psychotherapist for 50 years.
Oh, yes.
And we're working on a book he's writing about belief.
Yep.
And, you know, beliefs affect everything. Like
yes.
Literally everything that we do is somehow impacted by a belief. And one of the biggest places we experience beliefs is in this whole idea of who we are, who we're supposed to be, and then that gets us into the whole area of body image.
And what are we supposed to look like according to whom, right? Like
right.
Media or advertisers or whatever they're trying to sell, right? That whole, you know, we're not good enough because they need to sell us a product, right?
Absolutely.
So they want us to believe that, you know, and this amazing book, Reflections of a Fat Girl, Wisdom Lost and Found from Growing Up Overweight by Ilene Leshinsky. I just finished this book and I have to say, so much wisdom in here. So much I can relate to, especially as a female, what we go through, and I can't wait to introduce her and to share, because this is something that all women go through. You know, and everybody's affected by it, whether they're your wife or your daughter or your cousin or whatever. We're all affected by it. And so let me read her bio to properly introduce her. So Ilene Leshinsky is the founder and creator of Find Body Freedom, a program for women who want to change their relationship with their bodies. In 1992, after 3 decades of personal struggles with her body image, weight, and relationship with food, Ilene had an epiphany that sparked the creation of Find Body Freedom and her own transformation. She quit dieting, embraced intuitive eating, and developed a program to help women find their innate body wisdom and their path to body freedom. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I got so much from your book. I totally related to your book for everything from the whole Weight Watchers or what new program we have to do or constantly looking for an answer outside of ourselves. So
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, because you've got so much wisdom, so many years of experience of going through this, please share with us how you came into creating the intuitive eating program.
Thank you, yes. Well, it started probably when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Because by the time I was 5 years old, I was considered a fat child. I was a fat girl, which is hence the title of the book. And the story goes actually that my mother, in response to some anxiety she had about my grandmother, overfed me by, for example, walking around the kitchen with a mop on her head, and when I smiled and laughed, the spoon would go in for more food, after I had already completed my meal, because my grandmother said I'm too thin, I'm not gaining weight, et cetera, et cetera. So over the years, I became a fat child, but also I lost the innate body wisdom that basically says we were born knowing how to eat.
Yes.
I lost the signals for hunger and satiety, which are key to whether we call it intuitive eating or natural eating, attuned eating. That becomes a problem if we're looking up on the outside for
Yes.
cues of how to eat, and instead of on the inside.
Yeah, because imagine what kind of message were you getting? Like, oh, I guess, my mom has a mop on her head and she's happy or she's smiling when I eat, right? So that's already, I see, like a communication or belief system that maybe was created, right?
That's a wonderful observation, actually. My mother's smiling, she's feeding me.
Yes.
So there's a link between,
Yes.
This is a happy time, I'm pleasing my mom.
Correct.
And overeating,
Right.
which is in essence what it became.
It kind of reminds me of, and I know a lot of people have seen this, how many times in the supermarket or in a store where you have a little kid and he's a young baby or whatever and fussing and whatever, and right away the mother gives the baby food to stop the crying or to pacify the baby. So that's like a signal also that we learn, like, oh, if I'm upset or angry or hurt or whatever, it's kind of like the emotional eating. It's like you could trace it back to that.
Absolutely, hence the start of emotional eating.
I see it all the time. Sometimes I feel
Yes.
like saying, don't
Stop it.
Stop doing that, right? Because it makes these connections in the brain
Yes.
for a baby to think, oh, okay, I feel better when I eat because I was crying,
Yes,
so.
yes, yes.
And that goes back to beliefs. Where do we get beliefs, Lynn? Maybe they form from something that came outside of our belief. Maybe it was indoctrinated into us as a child.
Well, absolutely. One of the main places our beliefs come from is our need to survive in a dysfunctional household, in a dysfunctional family with addicted parents, or that they're always fighting and all these things going on, and the child, I'll do whatever it takes just to survive, and then they form these beliefs. And so, how many households where there'd be, an argument between the parents, and then they take the kids through the drive-through,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because,
sense,
nobody cooked dinner because they were too busy fighting,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
I
you
get
got to
it.
feed the kids. So what do? And then I was even thinking, like, the way they rotate commercials on TV,
Yeah.
where you could actually go to the gym and on your way home go through the drive-through to load up on calories.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing is by accident, but and so it creates all this frustration because you're actually fighting against a system, and you're being taught to fight against your own system.
I think, Ilene, you really touched on something that I can relate to. Most females can. How many times the trends with, like in the 70s, like the Super Miss Twiggy, which, oh, is that what we're supposed to look like now? Or whatever these, different trends are. And it's like, they want to sell us a product. That's their bottom line, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm so happy that through your experience, your trials and tribulations, you realized it's all about intuitive eating.
Yes, yes. It's all about intuitive eating. And I want to say here, that's not my term necessarily, because that came later actually than when I
Okay.
started my program. But it all revolves around understanding actually what happens is we get messages from
Right.
our bodies
Yes.
that translate into, okay, so now what do I do with those messages? So I had to relearn, and many women have to learn and
Yeah.
relearn how do we know when we're hungry? As opposed to the clock on the wall says I'm hungry. How do I know when I've had enough? As opposed to either the serving size on the package or Weight Watchers points or exchanges.
I remember those days.
You know, or whatever it is that is external to us. So.
And you know, what you have is a message that really gets to be shared around the world, or at least around the country, so people can really tune into our body. Everybody's body is different. We can't say, okay, because I'm 5'2", I'm supposed to weigh this amount. It's like once we adopt, I loved a lot of things that you spoke about, mindful eating. How, are we really eating? Just like I'm guilty of it. How many times I'm in a rush? I got to eat. I can't, you know, I just want to eat. I'm so hungry. But I know I get value from mindful eating, like sitting, like just chewing and biting, like really taking my time and being mindful about what I'm eating, enjoying it, being grateful. Like there's so many different things that you spoke about that are part of this whole journey. Tell us more about so many great hacks and tips and so many things that you've learned.
Well, one of the things that I think is really important here, and it piggybacks on what you're saying, Louise, what I discovered, food tasted so much better when I was hungry.
Yes.
But I never knew that because I was eating when I was eating willy-nilly. I was eating when I wasn't hungry.
Yes.
And what ended up happening for me when I, again, started to pay attention to my body signals, I was able to determine, oh my God, I can stop eating before I make myself sick.
Yes.
Because before, I was just shoveling it in. I mean, Lynn, you were talking earlier about beliefs and what we do in childhood in order to manage living in a chaotic home. And I know that I ate because a lot of the stuff that you mentioned was going on in my household. And when I was able to create for myself an environment that was conducive to mindful eating, to attuned eating, I so enjoyed the eating process, and I wasn't afraid of it, and I wasn't checking out when I was doing it so that I overate. It just became a whole new experience, and I looked forward to getting hungry, which for a lot of women, and Louise, you'll tell me whether this is true for you, for a lot of women, hunger, there's fear attached to hunger. If I get hungry, that means I have to eat. If I eat, I'm going to take in more calories. As opposed to, I get hungry. It's exciting because my body is healthy and I'm fueling my body.
Yes.
So
Agreed.
I'm fueling my body for the stuff of daily living.
Or is it that some people are eating all these sweets and a lot of carbs or sweets, and it's like, are you really hungry, or is it just your blood sugar's down? Right? 'Cause
Wonderful question.
A lot of people, maybe they're not eating right, and it's like, maybe it's just your blood sugar's down. Maybe if they switch their diet, they'd get, maybe whatever. I'm just saying from my experience, when I've changed my diet and eaten healthier, I noticed less of the exaggerated, like, oh my God, I got to eat right now because I'm eating healthier food. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yes.
I do. And one of the things that I encourage all people to do, not just women, is to understand that one of the core principles of healthy eating is that food is fuel for the body.
Yes.
Sweets, chips,
Right.
ice cream, not fuel.
Right.
I mean, they might taste great, and I'm not saying that people can't eat them.
Right.
But the point is, when we're hungry, the body is signaling from the inside out, I need fuel.
Right.
I need fuel to do the stuff of living.
Sure.
And having me be able to manage my daily activities. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So true. And you even said it, even as a baby, like as an infant, if you fed your child or breastfed your child, you know, when they're done eating, they're done, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they know.
Because they were born knowing how
Right?
to eat.
Right.
That's the innate wisdom.
That
We're
is
wired that way.
so
We are
true.
born knowing how to eat.
Yes, we are.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also spoke a lot about, which is really important, you also spoke a lot about like the advertising and media and how that affects us, because everybody's body is unique and everybody gets to embrace their we get to embrace our uniqueness. And how do you think, for especially young women coming up in their 20s now, what advice can you give to them about, you know, all your years of experience and what you've been through? What do you think would be good advice for them?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I did
Please.
many, many years ago and translate that
Okay.
into the current media climate.
Yes.
Years and years ago, when I recognized that I had unhealthy beliefs about my body because of what I was seeing
Yeah.
and reading, I stopped all of my subscriptions to fashion magazines and to magazines that promoted health, but really on their cover they were advertising diets and thin women on the cover. It just didn't make sense to me, and it wasn't good for my mental health, so I stopped that. There are a lot of parents that I work with now and over the years who are actually encouraging their daughters in particular, but many of them their boy children also, to just not use social media.
Yeah.
Because
Social
social
media
media,
is
and
so-
again,
yeah.
I think it's wonderful in many ways.
Yes.
But there's a problem there because anything, you could put, any of us could put an image on there that's
Right.
photoshopped, airbrushed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that gets into the psyche of young girls. And what we now know is there are still a preponderance of life-threatening eating disorders that arise in teenagers and in young women. And so, you know, anything that we can do to lessen the impact
Yes.
of media representation would be helpful.
Thank you for that. And you even mentioned, I think, in your book that it's on the rise for young men, too.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Because
it
I
is.
guess the rise of social media and, you know, this image of what people think they're supposed to look like. So, yeah, I mean, it's even affecting, you know, men, and maybe even more so. Maybe men don't want to talk about it as much as females, right? As females, we seem to communicate a lot more effectively. And
When you look at the numbers,
yeah,
of males with eating disorders, firstly, they fall mostly in young men, boys, teenagers
makes
that are
sense.
impacted by it. But I have worked with a lot of adult men who have eating disorders, and it's really sad
Yes.
that has taken over
yeah.
not only a female population,
Sure.
that's bad enough, but also a male population as well.
You know, you both mentioned social media.
Yes.
Yes.
And one of the things that I don't know the right word to use, I'm going to say that sometimes troubles me, is that so many women are quick to post a photo of themselves and it generates likes, but it's almost like they're still trapped in this idea that it's all about the looks, it's all about the body. And I rarely see women post accomplishments that you know, successes that they've achieved in the world. And not that that's a whole lot better, but at least it would suggest that there's more to women than how they look. Because we're still carrying this thing out, we're still playing it out, even though we're saying we're not, we're still doing it, and we're still have all of this stuff. And I just, you know, likes are almost like addictive now, right?
Oh, yeah.
I would agree.
It's like you need you don't see that the likes are needing approval from outside of you.
Yeah, it's like a
Right.
dopamine hit, right? They
Yeah.
say that, when you're on social media, whatever it is, it's like that dopamine hit in the brain, like, oh wow, I got another like, or I got this, or I got a comment. So it easily feeds into that, for sure.
I agree. I do. I agree. And I think you're right. And here again, this goes back decades, hundreds of
Oh,
years,
yes.
where women's bodies have been commodities. How do we
Absolutely.
get, years ago, we needed a man because
Yeah. Right.
how else were we going to
Right.
put food in our mouths and feed our
Right.
children? And it's basically the same thing now, only it's taken off so much more because of social media.
Oh,
that
yeah.
has far
It
more
grows
of a
quickly.
reach.
Oh, yeah, far more of a
Yes.
reach. It grows quickly.
Yes.
And they know, the media, advertising, they know that it's so much easier to spread their message because their message of what's wrong with us, because they want to sell us a product, right? So
Right.
that's their message. They're trying for us to find fault and what is wrong with us. So we get to really embrace what you talk about, which is our uniqueness,
Yes.
I think what exudes when you have confidence and you believe in yourself, I think you even said you had a client or something that they said their spouse said even if like she wasn't eating healthy that particular day, she even was like slumped down, or her body language was reflecting that.
Yes,
So it
yes.
shows, when you're
It does.
confident in yourself.
It does. And one of the things that's hard for a lot of people to embrace, men and women, I think, is that beauty comes in all shapes and sizes. And one of the things that I like to say to my clients, to the world, look at the natural world.
Yes.
The natural world comes in all shapes and sizes. And look at the beauty of the flowers and the shrubbery. Look at the beauty of the animals. And I years ago, got one of my dogs from a shelter. And, those dogs in the shelter weren't in their little play area talking about which one had a fat belly or thick thighs. All they wanted
You're
to
right.
do was play. All they wanted to do was to be adopted in order to get love. It doesn't happen in the natural world, but it happens in the world of humans. And that is, I think, very, very unfortunate. And we can embrace beauty comes in all shapes and sizes.
And that's so
love
important
that.
because each of us is here with gifts to give the world.
Yes.
And when you're trapped in this struggle of am I good enough and do I look good enough, you're not out there giving your gifts to the world. You're stuck back, on square one, waiting and hoping that you'll be one day good enough to share your gifts with the world. And everybody loses when people go into that place.
I love that you said that, Lynn, to be very honest with you, because if we are not and I'm getting back to eating now, if we're not fueling our bodies properly, there isn't enough energy, there isn't enough feeding of the brain, let alone how the body moves, in order to be creative, in order to write a book, in order to be contributing in the world. And so what a lot of diets, exercise programs, whether it's for men and women, have done is trap us
Yes.
so that we're stuck in trying to achieve something that for 95% of, I'll speak for women now, we can't achieve. Because I don't know about you, Louise, I wasn't born to look like Twiggy.
Right.
Just
right.
what? I'm 5 feet tall.
I get it.
It wasn't going to happen.
I'm 5'1". I'm the
Yeah,
same. I get
there
it.
you go.
I know.
There you
And
go.
I had to give up. I just couldn't keep up anymore with the low fat and then the low sugar and then you can't eat meat. You can't. I finally came to a point where I was like, I'm not doing any of that anymore. I'm just going to eat what feels good to me.
Well, there you go.
I just couldn't keep up. I was like, if it has 3 or 4 ingredients on it, then it's a good thing. If I can't read the ingredients, I'm not going to eat it, you know. So
And if
had
I
to give-
can't pronounce the
Yes.
ingredients.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, I mean,
yes.
it came to a point where I was just like, I'm eating what feels good for me. So I get that, the intuitive eating and what feels good to me. And I know when I'm eating something that I'm not supposed to, and I get it. I've learned enough after years of, you know, trying different things
Right.
and eating
but
different
even
things.
that's interesting, right? Because you use the word not supposed to.
Yeah, well,
And
right.
that creates actually a cycle within us.
Right. Well,
right?
like if
Because
it's
I-
dinner time and
'cause
I'm
I
eating
think that
cookies.
way too sometimes, right?
But
Yeah.
yeah, but like if it's dinner time and I'm eating a brownie or cookies, I'm like, all right, I can't. There's a time and place for everything, right? You know.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
Could I add to that for a
Yes,
second?
please.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing you, and there it gets back to, though, if it's dinner time.
Yes.
And you're hungry.
Correct.
There we go to food is fuel for the body.
Exactly.
If you want a brownie,
Yep.
have your dinner first,
Yes.
fuel your body and your brain, and then leave room for a tasty treat.
I always do, Eileen.
There you go, Louise.
Anybody who knows me knows that I always leave room for a tasty
There you go.
treat.
There you go. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Eileen, what do you have going on that you'd like to share with our audience? What kinds of things are happening in your world? Things that you might like to share with our audience about how they can find you, how they could work with you, what types of things are happening?
Well, I love that question. I love that question. So thank you for asking. What I'd like to say now also is that I've been a psychotherapist for 30 years, and along with that, developed the program Find Body Freedom for women in particular, although I work with men. But also now I have become an intuitive healer, an intuitive energy healer. And what I'm doing now is finally integrating all of those tools, all of those gifts and talents that I have under one overarching premise, which is on IleneLeshinsky.com. And basically that is your soft place to land for healing, because I can help anyone who works with me be able to work through a lot of the blockages that they're experiencing that doesn't allow them to flourish, to thrive, and to blossom, basically, in their lives. So that's where it is. That's where it is right now for me.
Well, that's fantastic.
Thank you for sharing your gifts with the world, right? You were talking
Yes,
about we all get to share our
absolutely.
gifts.
Because what
Thank
you're
you.
doing is you can actually help free people from getting off the
Hamster wheel.
Yes, the hamster wheel of not feeling good enough to do their part to make their contribution to the world.
Thank you.
And that's so important for all of us to
Yes.
to feel free enough to be able to go out and do that. And as we wrap up the show, we're going to have a very interesting guest next week.
Oh, yes.
We're gonna.
Exciting.
I haven't checked to see whether he made it into town into town yet or not. But if all goes as planned, our guest next week will be an author from Denmark, who will be joining us in the studio, and he has written an amazing fantasy book, which talks all about good and evil. That's the crux of the story.
Desmantia, right? Is that the name of it?
It's called Desmantia,
Desmantia.
and hopefully it'll be available in the U.S. in the next several months. So, as always, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you
You'll
so much.
Find us
Thank you.
right here next Thursday at 5:30. Please share with your friends, and we will look forward to seeing you once again.
Thanks for tuning in.
Imagine rediscovering a past life.
Now imagine finding the person you shared it with.
And I just told all my friends, I'm like, you guys have to read this because I can't put it down. And I have not even gotten to the half of the book yet.
We are Lynn Everard and Louise Gomez, and we are the authors of the book, The Reuniting of Two Past Lives and the Unveiling of the 12 Sacred Lessons.
We invite you to purchase the book and discover the magic. Even if you have never written a book, you are still an author. In fact, we all are. In every moment, each of us is writing our own unique story that we call our lives. Because many of us are, as in the lyrics of the Dan Hill song, Sometimes When We Touch, writers still trapped within our truth. If this is you, why not start writing your thoughts in a journal? It will help you get your truth on paper and could just be the start of your own book. And don't forget to join us here every week for the next edition of The Editor's Desk.